Okay, we're good, right?
You are good, and I love your trucks.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so, okay, so I will cover the startup and going to date. And when I said, well, what do you want to see for pictures? The only uh, criteria seemed to be just make them cool. So I did my presentation is actually based around what cool pictures I had as opposed to like vice versa. So um, okay, the last thing to do is advance forward. And hang on. Okay, so here's what Stefan was talking about, the STB filing. The big date, December 20th, when we found out that we were going to start up. It was like deja vu all over again for me because I was with Wisconsin Central back when they started up, and we had the infamous 45-day or whatever it was stay from the Surface Transportation Board when we thought we were going to start up and we didn't, and then we didn't, and then all of a sudden we could, and hurry up. But yeah, this was our big event. So okay, so now we're within a couple of days of starting up. We'd had all our team members hired. Well, not all of them, but we had a significant number of conductors and engineers, people like that we had hired, thinking that we were going to start up July 1st. That was the date that we thought, based that, like Stefan explained, on the original STB filing and the 30 days and everything. You know, we thought, oh, perfect, July 1st, it's summertime. We've got all our people in place, engines, equipment, everything, you know, and then the date comes and goes, radio silence from the STB. And then we thought we had another date, and I think that was more us just extrapolating. But if I remember right, Stefan, I think it was like September 30th or something like that, that we thought maybe based on a filing that we'd be able to start up again. And that date came and went, and still no message on when we were going to start up. And we've got all these people hired. Well, we don't want to lose the people. You know, we don't want to say, well, we'll call you, you know, when we're starting up. We wanted to make sure that we could retain them. So if I remember right, they were down on the Wisconsin and Southern training or working as like the third man on the crew or something. But okay, now, hey, now we can finally start up. We have a date. We know what we're going to do. So one of the ways to qualify them on their new territory was just a massive high rail trip that CN hosted, with our folks following and the vehicles behind. And basically that was how they qualified over the different line segments. This picture actually was a fluke. I live in Green Bay and I go for a walk every day at lunchtime. It was just a total coincidence that I'm out for my lunchtime walk, and I'm like, huh, look at this. Must be the qualifying trip. So one thing that I did that kept me busy before we actually started up was what we call the spotting guides. So with everybody being new, well, not literally everybody, there were literally maybe 2 or 3 trainmen from the CN that came to work for us, but otherwise everybody is new. And nobody's been able to be on the property either, except for, you know, like that one high rail trip along each of the lines. So if you're brand new, see, all the tracks have numbers. I mean, that's how we identify tracks. In the old days, you know, they all had names, but now with the computer, all the tracks have numbers. So on your tablet or work order or whatever it is, cars are guided to a specific track number. And then sometimes within that track number, you'll also have spots, you know, spot 1, spot 2, spot 3. The plastics guys do that a lot, where they've got nozzles and hoses to hook up to the cars. So they're like, okay, put this car at spot 3, put this car at spot 5, etc. So one of the things I did was prepared the spotting guide for the whole FOXY, and we kept the same track numbers as CN did. Just there wouldn't be any confusion then, because the customers were used to the track numbers. The way that the customers look for cars, order in cars, look at their tracks is by track numbers. So we kept the same track numbers as CN when we put our plan together. But it all seemed kind of nebulous still. It didn't seem real. It all seemed kind of squishy. I started on November 1st. Again, we didn't start up till January 29th. Like Stefan says, we go and talk to customers, but it would be like, well, can't really talk about that yet because we haven't started up yet. Well, we don't really have a railroad to operate. We'll talk about this once we're going. But nice seeing you. But it really hit home about a week before we started up when our locomotives arrived in Green Bay. And the two on the left would continue on up to the GDLK in the Upper Peninsula. The two on the right were those that stayed in Green Bay, but that's when it felt real. It was like, oh, it's tangible. I can like actually go over and touch something, of our new railroad. True, it's not for a couple of days yet, but it's like, oh, there's hope. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is like really going to happen. So the day, I guess the day of, you might call it, the full day before we started at midnight. That's what Stefan alluded to with the transfer of inventory from CN over to us. What happens anytime you start up a railroad is everybody fans out and does what they call a physical inventory. You go to all the locations where there are cars and you make a physical check. You write down the car's initial number and you verify that against the inventory that you load into the system, and you make sure before you start operating that every track correctly is up to date with each car and they're in the proper order. This was Bellevue, Wisconsin. I decided I was going to get ahead of the curve and do it nice and early in the morning. And it was like, there were only 5 degrees out there at that point in time. And I don't think I found any of the 5 degrees. It was freaking cold, but hey, I got a neat sunrise picture. So, that just made it all worthwhile. But like Stefan says, we loaded the inventory. So starting at midnight and running till about 8 a.m., the Watco people in headquarters worked very closely with the CN people. And it was a very methodical line by line transfer of the inventory. And the fact that, like I said, we kept the same track numbers helped immensely. I was freaking out for the week beforehand. I just didn't think it was going to go this smoothly. I was a victim of the Wisconsin Central startup in 1987 when all the data from the Sioux line that was supposed to be all transferred in mass from the Sioux line computer to the WC computers crashed. And there was always that conspiracy theory that there was sabotage, but that was something that was never conclusively proven. So officially, the programming didn't work. It crashed. If I remember right, Stefan, didn't the same thing happen with the Conrail breakup too? That was kind of there were a lot of inventory control or transfer issues, and you ended up with lost cars, not knowing what was in cars.
I mean, when I first joined Watco, that just was part of it. You started up and then chased cars for 2 weeks. That's what's really gotten better is we've kind of worked with our class ones to do this in cadence. Like we did this, what was it, 4 different times leading up to the actual day we did it. Like, that's the other thing is you don't just do it for the first time when you need to. So we did it, I want to say 4 times, the 4 days ahead as a dry run, I believe.
Yeah. And we did have that little issue with Dutchtown Southern, even though that really wasn't a data transfer issue. That was more of a CNE business issue, but that was on everybody's minds too. So yeah, Stefan's bang on. The transfer just went absolutely flawless, and we were able to start up knowing where everything was and having everything in the proper inventory. Like I said, I'm kind of molding this presentation around what pictures I have. I stopped by the Appleton Depot. There was a lot of seriously high-priced executive talent here, hanging the what was to be the bulletin board for the train crews there in the Appleton Depot. So that was kind of funny. But now out in the field, there was some serious work going on. If you think of every single road crossing where you've got those phone numbers, in the case of an emergency to call, you want to slap up the new numbers and be current as quick as possible with who to call. So people were going around to every grade crossing, putting the new Watco phone numbers up. All the locks for the switches and the derails all needed to be changed because Watco has different locks than CN does. And it wouldn't do any good for Watco to start up operating at midnight that night and not be able to unlock any of the switches or derails or everything. So all of the switches and derails and anything that had a lock on it had to be all changed out that day from the CN to Watco. So I was with the first Green Bay crew. I went along with them because being the creator and the architect of the spot book and having some complexity to the Green Bay industries, I said I would go out with them. So they went to work at 1800 at night. This was our first Green Bay crew. I think there'd been one or two other trains during the day. Like I think Wausau might have had one earlier, but this was still one of the first trains on the FOXY. Our mechanical supervisor was there to kind of help with the locomotive inspection prior to moving the locomotives and turning the first wheel. It was kind of funny. So we get the locomotive inspection all done, where the engineer walks around the locomotive and looks everything over. And we do the brake test to make sure the locomotive brakes are all setting and releasing like they're supposed to. Conductor looks over his paperwork. So they're ready. They're finally ready to move. We're going to start. We're going to turn our first wheel. And everybody looks at each other in the locomotive cab and goes, "What do we say on the radio? Who do we talk to?" it was like, what do we do? So everybody stared at each other. And I finally said, because I was a former CN person, I said, "Do you want me to talk on the radio?" And they're all like, "Oh, would you?" So I'm like, okay. So go over to the radio and call the yardmaster, who there is no yardmaster in Green Bay anymore. He got combined with the Neenah yardmaster, and he's physically down at Neenah. Sometimes you call him the Neenah yardmaster. Sometimes you call him the Green Bay yardmaster. He seems to answer to either or, but call him on the radio. And then it's like, oh shit. It's like, what track are we on? So we kind of stumble through it. It's like, yeah, FOXY, we're ready to come out and get on our cars, and just hoping that he knew like where in the yard we were, but he did. So he walked us through how to get over onto our train. So we successfully made it, zigzagging over, successfully got on our train. This is pumping air and doing our air test. Got across the river, okay. The bridge was permanently closed for the navigation season, so we didn't have to worry about having to swing the bridge closed or anything like that. This is shoving into Procter & Gamble for the first time, it was actually our second delivery. We'd already delivered to Georgia Pacific, so we're making our our second delivery of the night to P&G. I thought the sign was most applicable. And then you've seen this picture before over at Green Bay Packaging. So we've now successfully done our third customer in Green Bay. So it went on and it went on. Now, this, I have to take full responsibility for this. I've always been so intrigued with when people have signs, like on the front nose of a locomotive, first run, or usually you see it more sadly with last runs. But I made up a sign and I said, hey guys, we really need to take a picture here. And 2/3 of them are, I would say, like-minded people of the railfan persuasion. So it really was not a hard sell. They were all behind it. In fact, they're like, oh, send me a picture too, will you? Send me a shot. So I was just tickled to death with how well this came out. I tell people, I say, the iPhone is an amazing invention. So I thought this was cool. I sent it into Watco's corporate image librarian. I don't know what else to call the gentleman. And, just let it go at that. Well, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Watco put out a system-wide, corporate-wide video for everybody in Watco, and it was basically about welcoming new team members and some other activities, and it was from the VP of Human Resources. And 26 seconds into it, I'm like, I'll be damned, look at that. So that I was quite pleased to see that, and actually happier more, to be honest, for the team members that they get the recognition that I think they truly deserve. So I think that's what I'm most happy about with all this. So going about our nightly rituals, we're still training people, still need people. Though, like I say, we still have a number of trainees that we're working through the paces. So like Stefan said, ideally we'd have started up in summer. Starting up in the middle of winter was a royal pain in the ass. You have a lot of complexities that rear their ugly heads. Switches, you've got frozen switches, you've got gap switches, you've got ice will thaw, and then that night it freezes, and now you've got frozen switch again, and then the switch gaps again. And I think this particular here, that's our lead into Georgia Pacific and Green Bay, they've been out at least 2 or 3 times since we've started up, where we've had switch failures and have been able to complete our nightly rounds. So yeah, July 1st would have been nice. A lot of stuff that we do has to be done on the spot, out in the field. Here's one of the Carmen. This was a blown coupler pocket that had to be repaired on the spot. The people are fantastic. Usually people are up within a couple hours. The worst case scenario is we get attended to the next day. It's a combination of our own people and people off the WSOR at Horcon that will respond to supplement our folks. All the locomotive work has to be done out in the open. 92-day inspection is being done here. Again, it's not fun in the middle of winter, but well, we have no choice, so we make it work, and everybody has made it work. Stefan went over these earlier, so I want to zero in on value our customers. It's been very interesting coming here, and like I say, I was WC, then I was a class 1 for 20 years. Now I'm back to the short line. It's been fun and it's been interesting. So obviously we engage with our customers the normal traditional way. We have our meetings with them where we talk over all the things that we would talk over with the corporate people, I guess you would say. But what I've been excited about is the amount of field facilitation that goes on between the various team members and our customers. One night, Green Bay Packaging, the night people at the loading dock rejected 2 cars, which rarely happens. Normally we get 100% load ratio, but for some reason, not 1, but 2 cars both got rejected that night at 2 in the morning. And I noticed that early the next morning, I was looking over their track and it's like bad doors. Like, what the fuck? What is this? Well, just by coincidence, we had one of our carmen from Horicon up at Procter and Gamble right next door working on securing some car doors shut so they could be made safe to move that were bad orders. So I said, hey, when you're all done, would you mind just swinging around to the other side of Green Bay Packaging and just looking at these cars? And in fact, if you don't mind, I'd really like to get the loading supervisor or the guy that supervises all the loading dock people. I'd really like to have him come out too and just, let's just see, what the deal is. So we were able to get them together, and sure enough, the doors opened just fine. And everything, he said, yeah, I guess the cars are okay. Let's put them in and load them. So 2 cars that normally under the normal course of events would have been rejects and empties and had to be replaced. Not only did we save the cars for loading, but we were able to, like I say, have that interaction with the customer so that he could then go back to his people and say, hey, we got these cars loaded today, or we got these doors open today without any problem. So our track people, same exact thing. One day, one of the customers down in Denmark had some concerns about the condition of his track. He was worried that there might be some safety issues. Now, our track inspector would have come out anyways. I'm not saying that he wouldn't, but just by coincidence too, that day he was going to high rail the Denmark line. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to be there anyways. What time do you want to meet? I'm like, well, how about 1 o'clock? Okay, he said, okay, see you then. So within 3 hours of the customer calling us, expressing concern about his track condition, we were walking the track with the track inspector, and he was reassuring our customer that no, everything looks fine. Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying, but it's okay. Okay, maybe this tie looks bad, but it's got a good tie on each side of it. So, for this class of track, that's perfectly acceptable. Don't worry about it. And, we had the customer reassured by the end. Our train crews. This was the second switch that we made at Rio Creek Feed Mill out at Luxembourg. When we made the very first switch, understandably, the cars weren't exactly where, they were hoping to maybe have the cars, which is understandable. I mean, it's the first time that we switched there, and I did the best I could with the spotting guides, but still you can't capture everything. So I said, well, how about when we come back on Thursday, why don't we get together with the conductor and we can talk over, what your expectations are, and he can also, convey to you his concerns and expectations, and we'll have a meeting of the minds. So beautiful. So when the train got there on Thursday, we all got together, had a great conversation, and as far as I know, everything's been fine since. So there's just so many multiple ways that we interact with the customers to ensure that they're getting the service and the love and care that, really that they should. So my hat's off to all of these team members for being customer first. Another thing that I thought for sure Stefan was probably going to bring up. Well, he did with the low hanging fruit. I guess this does fall under the low hanging fruit category. Two customers specifically Midwest Paper there, the old Appleton papers years ago at Combined Locks on the Kimberly line, and 3M. Both of them had been in discussions with CN for considerable amount of time, wanting additional switch frequencies, like 7 days a week as opposed to 5. And they kept saying, if you serve us more, you will get more cars. Right now, we're trucking product that could be going out rail, but we need, we have physical limitations. Like for instance, here at the paper mill, their track only holds 5 cars. So you literally cannot give them 2 days worth of cars, on one day and say, okay, that's your Saturday and your Sunday switch. I mean, if you want to have the loads that they make available on Sunday, well, you have to be there on Sunday. So that's something that CN, they could not get CN to do. And the same with 3M. 3M and CN, we've been in discussions for a considerable amount of time over different ways to go about serving 3M with additional capacity for them to ship more, but it just wasn't clicking. Watco takes over right on day one. 3M gets 2 switches a day. And again, that first weekend, because we started up on a Saturday, that first weekend, Midwest Paper Group got their Sunday switch. So, and this also is what Stefan was saying about the STB. What was so frustrating about the STB holdup going on for 8 months was because the customers knew that as soon as Watco took over, there would be this enhanced service that they were so desperately wanting. And they were just sitting there in a holding pattern too, waiting for the STB ruling, allowing us to take over so that they could ship more by rail. So again, starting up in winter was not our ideal scenario. This is up at Bradley. I've been having fun kind of just naming trains. I like to call this the Bradley Bullet. We've also got, I've also come up with, I like the Denmark Zephyr, the Kimberly Rocket, the Shawano Streak. I mean, it's all kind of funny because a lot of lines are 10 miles an hour. So it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek. Here's up at Munising. I don't want to neglect the GDLK up in the Upper Peninsula. This is after 2 days of rain had knocked down a lot of the snow. The snow was more significant. But again, winter startup, here we are. And then this is out on the line at Shingleton, en route to Munising. I'll close off here with just a couple of pictures that I just like. I guess it's my prerogative. When you make the show, you get to put in your pictures. So like I said, I'm in Green Bay. I can literally walk over to and just take this picture. Coming across the bridge in Green Bay. I was like 10 seconds too late. I really wanted this train here in Appleton, down in the flats going across the bridge. It was one of those one red light, too late scenarios, but well, this one wasn't all that bad either. The New London subdivision, leaving the yard in Appleton and running out to one of the industries on the far edge of Appleton to spot them a car. And out there at Rio Creek. I thought this was always a neat kind of industry shot as we're switching the feed mill out there. And then all done and walking the air test and back to the engine and ready to go. And then in one of the paper mills, and that's what all the wood pulp looks like that comes in boxcars by rail. It's all in these bundles. And this is, even on class ones, I'm still totally amazed. This is like the largest truck I've seen. but not only for a short line, but even on a class one for our track guys, it kind of reminds me more of a rolling tank, to be honest. And once again, he's out here on our problem switch there in Green Bay by Georgia Pacific, attending to it. It's kind of like opening up a closet, you know, that you haven't seen in 30 years and like, oh, look at this, look at this. We're still trying to figure out like what exactly we have. It's like, well, what weight rail is this? You know, is it 90? Is it 80? So just like I say, trying to figure out still what everything is that we have. Going by the park there in Appleton, the Kimberly Rocket trottles its way back to Appleton. And just in the event that anybody was actually wondering if that bulletin board in Appleton did get properly put up, yes, it did. So with that, I close out my presentation of the startup of FOXY.
Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Stefan. And I'm going to say would be great here if the folks in the room showed a big round of applause with your little reaction here up in your top corner of your screen, or however you wish to. Now, I'm sure we have lots of questions. So Stefan, if you don't mind, I'll be your moderator. I'll take the loudest person first. Oh, come on.
The first person first.
The first person first.
I'll
All right,
ask a question.
Okay, go ahead, Dan. Dan has a question.
I was just kind of curious about the northern cluster. A lot of that traffic's dried up over the years. There's a lot of pulpwood stuff. What do you think as far as growth goes up there?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, we have spent an enormous amount of time. I'll let Brian answer it in detail, trying to find those loggers and trying to find the markets, because as everyone I'm here surely knows, you know, Rapids was pretty much the last big destination for rail logs. And with it not, you know, being in operation, that we're just going to have to get more creative. So we have, you know, we've stuck our flag out. Brian and Brad Piet are up there all the time trying to find business. But it is going to be tough. You know, there are a lot of folks, as Brian points out, who are very passionate about that area, that say there are opportunities, and we're looking for them. But it's not going to be easy. But Brian, I don't know if you want to add on, but that's how I would sum it up at a high level.
Yeah, it is definitely a challenge because we want to go after the logs that used to exist on rail in large numbers. One of the things specifically that we would love to target is if it could be a log move just on the FOXY, for instance, coming off the Ashland line and going maybe to the mills at Mosinee or Rothschild or Rhinelander that we serve, and could therefore be strictly a FOXY move. We could price it entirely ourselves. We know we could turn the equipment fast. The problem is that over the years, as the vast majority of the logs up there have migrated to trucks, and it's been a number of years since that has happened, the railroad, how the railroad is part of the supply chain has just basically been lost, you might say. It's been so long since we've been part of the paper mills mindset to be part of their supply chain that we're basically a non-entity now when it comes to moving logs. And to try and interject yourself back into the supply chain, it's very hard. A lot of the mills too, with the Wisconsin Rapids mill going down, like Stefan said, that was a huge drawer of logs from that whole northern central Wisconsin area. So with them no longer buying up logs, all the other mills now can source logs closer to their mill. And the mills tell us that you got to go more than 50 or 75 miles out from the mill before rail really gets economical for them to consider putting logs on rail. Well, a lot of their log sourcing now they can do closer to the mill. So it's just very, very truck friendly. The other thing that's happened with the logs is you used to have these log landings where they would where trucks would come in and they would consolidate logs like Ashland, and then they would load them up into rail cars. Well, over time, a lot of those landings now have closed and the mills have gone to a more truck direct model, trucking directly from the woods to the mill. So like I say, they found ways over the years to work around not having rail, and the ways that they've worked around not having rail don't really make it conducive to now going back to rail, unfortunately. The other thing is we continue to lose industries up there. The paper mill in Park Falls closed again just prior to FOXY starting up. I mean, gradually industries up there close is the unfortunate thing. What we've been trying to do is, because really the only tracks that exist up there now is what goes to the existing industries. If an industry closes, CN was pretty quick to take out the switch. So there's not like just switches and empty spur tracks laying around up there. So what I think one of our big ways to obtain growth up there is going to be transloading. Having the good old fashioned team track. And the advantage to that is then your universe of potential shippers is literally everybody, because you don't need a track then to come to the railroad. Literally anybody can. So I guess long question, long answer. Sorry about that. I'll let the next question arise.
Mike, Steve Glushenski here.
Hey, go ahead, Steve.
I get this feeling I'm sitting in 1987, because this is just like Wisconsin Central all over again, which I think shows the, for lack of a better term, the stupidity of the class ones. I always thought that CN, why they didn't just form Wisconsin Central to keep the Chicago Superior line and spin off the rest, I never understood, because they weren't interested in much of the rest. But that being said, do you anticipate that this is just a first step and that several of these other secondary lines will be becoming available from CN in the future?
Yeah, the way you look at that, it's really interesting. This is where you really have to separate your rail fandom from your business. And one of the things that I've noticed over and over again that a lot of short lines do is they march up to the class one and they say, you need to sell me this, or what you're selling me isn't enough. You need to throw in this. And I've always really kind of taken offense to that approach, because what if you what if I walked onto your property and started saying how stupid you were and this is how you should operate, right? They're not going to be very excited to talk to you. And so, the one thing that's been really impressive to learn under the tutelage of Rick Webb, and something I'm totally bought in on, is you take the opportunity given to you and you perform and you win, and then that person or company gives you the opportunity to grow. And so there's no doubt that when you look at the map, we can all sit here and come to, I think, a pretty good consensus on what could be out there next. And so the fact is, instead of trying to do that up front, or instead of demanding it, we're going to be there. We're going to show CN how we can grow, how we operate. And I can just tell you that in 10 years, the map is going to have a lot more FOXY lines on it. But we're going to do it methodically and through performance. And which is why I'm not going to mention any particular lines, because it just doesn't do any good. It's their system. They bought it. They can do what they want with it, but we are clearly interested in talking to them about expansion. Again, that's why it's so important to continue to prove out the Dutchtown model here and in Dutchtown and other places, so that they trust growing with us so we can continue to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could, I'll try and keep this under 10 minutes this time, but so when I was at CN, and one of my CN colleagues is on the call too, which I'm very happy to see. Hello, Jim, nice to see you. What we always said when short lines came, potential short line operators came to us, because it was amazing. If we had sold at CN every line that somebody came to us asking to operate, all there would be is just a stick from Chicago down to New Orleans. I mean, everything else would be gone, because at some point in time, virtually every line, somebody came to us and said, hey, we want to operate this line. And usually they try and come in with the angle that it will be cost reduction. And well, maybe yes, maybe no. What we always told the wannabes, as I called them, was, what can you have to tell us what you can do better than us that we can't. You know, you have to provide some value. We're just not going to change the color on the locomotive. And just, you know, on Friday, it's a red and black and white engine. And then on Monday, it's, you know, whatever, you know, green and purple. You have to show us what you can do that we can't, that will therefore increase traffic. And I think we can do that. So, and therefore make our case for additional acquisitions.
Oh, Mike, Steve McCarthy here for a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve. And thank you again, Steve Glashinsky, for the great question. Steve McCarthy, go right ahead.
Yeah, good evening, gentlemen. Great presentation. We all know a lot of discussion about future and lines and everything. And we've always discussed too about once the FOXY, hopefully the FOXY can really take off, like the former question, maybe a WC2 type scenario. But let's say in the future, you guys get good business drumming up to the north. Will that intertwine to the south end with the existing entity of WSOR and actually drumming up more business across the system and possibly even putting back lines that have been tore out, you know, in areas of that nature also?
Yeah, it's a good question. And one of the things that I think everyone should understand is, you know, the WSOR and some of the lines in the FOXY aren't too far apart, but, you know, I always get interested in how class ones and regionals try and get longer hauls. To Brian's point, you know, the one thing that class ones do really well is long haul. Like they do it really well. And so when you look at transit times and getting traffic, you know, to Chicago, you know, pre-blocking into Fond du Lac or Stevens Point, depending on which branch you're talking about, you know, which branch of ours you're talking about, they're going to get it to Chicago way faster than we could. And they already have pre-established routing protocol interchanges with almost everybody. And they're going to get it through Chicago pretty quickly. You know, if we were to connect to the WSOR, you'd have to get it over to Janesville. We have 136 car nightly restriction, 1 train a day, belt railway, pay the belt, hump it over. You add it all up. You know, one of the things that I think makes us so unique is, you know, we're willing to ride with the class one on the long haul because that's what they're good at. And if you pre-block it, if you work in their routing protocols, you can get very fast transit times. So in terms of trying to connect FOXY to WSOR to try and affect some sort of long haul in Chicago, I would say no. But to your point about out of service lines, yeah, I mean, it is every short line's dream to put track back into service. And so again, the key is you need to have customers and you need to have customers that can cover the cost, or a great state that will help cover the cost so you can get it in because the business case doesn't make it. And Wisconsin, through its FRIP and FRAP programs, are some of the best for that. So we are going to be looking for all sorts of opportunities like that. But in terms of getting traffic to the gateways, CN does a really good job of that. There's really no need to get WSOR into that game. And it also hurts WSOR because you're taking capacity from their train into the belt away and giving it to the FOXY when, let's face it, the CN Fond du Lac trains aren't at capacity, and the CN has a much higher capacity network to get to the other gateways. So that's how we're looking at it. And but to your point, if we start running out of capacity, it's a great problem to have, because that means we're growing the what out of the business. So I know that was a long answer, but that's how we look at it.
Thank you, Stefan. And sort of to dovetail on that, there are a couple of questions in the chat here. I'm going to skip the first one and come back to that in a moment. But the second question from Everett Grosskopf asks, will Watco continue to pursue state grants to help rehab lines for FOXY like they have for WSOR for the past 10 years or so?
Great question. It's going to have to take a little bit of a different form, because the grants that we pursue at the WSOR are based on the fact that the state actually owns the track that WSOR operates over. These tracks are owned by Watco entities, and so technically we can only apply for the loan part of the WSDOT programs, not the grant parts. But having said that, with the Chrissy and now RAISE and now the infrastructure bill, there is more money that can go into short line rail rehabilitation at the federal level than there's ever been times 1,000, right? I mean, we are literally at unprecedented funding levels for these types of operations. So the pivot is going to be to get federal dollars with the explicit support of WSDOT, not necessarily their funding, and get federal dollars that have been allocated in all these new programs. So great question. The answer is yes. It's just going to look in a little bit of a different form, like I just mentioned.
Thank you, Stefan. Steve Sobel asks, you mentioned the Algoma Central passenger train in the fall.
We're talking about the passenger train. I knew it. I knew I was going to get grilled on this.
Will a winter train run as well? Any word concerning the local service from the Sioux to Hearst?
We have a lot of historians on this call, and I want you to know, first off, the reason all the locomotives are still red and gray at WSOR is because I insisted the brand is bigger than Watco's, and I still believe that. And so I am a foamer. I am your friend. Okay. But I am a businessman too. And as CN has been operating this as one train instead of two for years, we do not have plans to run the Bear train or the All Stops train, as of right now. And more importantly, because of COVID and all the interruptions and us being new, we're not going to expand the schedule next year. We're going to run the schedule, which is basically fall trips, and get our feet wet and figure out what we have and what can we do better, because it is an opportunity. It's a beautiful location up in Agua Canyon and all of that. We've got 3 passenger locomotives. We have a ton of passenger cars, but we need to see what it was designed to do for a while, which is how CN's been operating it. And then we'll take it from there, but no plans to expand at this point. But that does not mean no. I want to be clear.
Thank you. Any other questions from the room?
I had a question about paint since you brought it up. Is there any chance to paint a FOXY engine, or is that going to be a Watco paint scheme?
Yeah, the plan is FOXY will probably be Watco paint scheme with the FOXY lettering. I know we take a lot of crap over the years on that, and to be honest, when folks complain, it makes me just want to paint everything black. So please be nice to us and know that we do care. But the big issue with these is because when we didn't know when we were going to start up, and then we suddenly were starting up, there was just no time to paint these things. So unfortunately, we got lease fleet all over. I know you guys hate that, but just like WSOR, give us time. I remember everyone just throwing loads of crap at us when the BN engines were here, and oh, Watco's going to screw that up. And now it's the UP engines. Well, I want everyone to understand the reason the UP engines didn't get painted is because they had to replace the WSOR engines we were moving up here. So we'll get there. But these lines are probably going to have the black and yellow. But in the end, we let the local teams kind of decide that. But hopefully we'll get some painted soon, and hopefully we'll get some of the 60s painted red and gray soon too.
Thank you for the question, Dan. And I will point out, Stefan was getting a little defensive there, but a definite win is
jokingly defensive.
A definite win is your FOXY trucks are just the coolest maintenance trucks ever. So well done there, sir. And that's got to be a fairly large investment, starting a new, everybody thinks of the locomotives and stuff, but there's so much other stuff, all the pickup trucks that you guys have to buy. It's amazing, right?
It adds up. It really does.
Yeah. A couple questions in the chat here. Jim Albrink asks, did you have any issues with getting everyone into the correct radio channels and phone systems?
IT, we have a lot of IT people up at startup, but I think everything went great, Brian. I know we've done this a lot. Do you want to add any local color?
I didn't hear anything that didn't. I think what helps a lot now is I don't think we have any landlines up here, do we? Everything is cell phones. So,
yep.
You know, you didn't have that whole complexity that you used to in days past.
Yep.
So
yeah, that part of it's actually gotten easier, I would say. I would agree with you there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Scott, thank you. I'm sorry, did I interrupt there, Brian?
No.
I've got a quick question.
Oh, go ahead, Ron.
You got the Eden branch that comes down out of Fond du Lac, has one customer. How often do you go down there, and where do you keep a motor for that? Is that kept in Fond du Lac, or do you bring one down out of somewhere else?
Great question. It's as needed, I believe, Brian. That's at least how it was modeled. I don't know if it's a scheduled job these days. I'd have to check, but it was modeled as needed, as you said, one customer. And we actually bring that motor up from the WSOR. That was a joint facility agreement, if you will, where we, because the closest, there's really no place to park a locomotive on that spur. And so we bring up a WSOR motor from the Slinger interchange. When it does have traffic to move, it goes to Fond du Lac. Our crew goes on duty there. It does its job and then comes back until it's needed again.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Just to be clear on that, so they go on duty in Fond du Lac. Is that what you're saying, Stefan?
Yeah, in the yard, I believe, Brian, right? That's at least how the agreement was written.
Hmm.
I haven't watched them do it live, Mike, but the way it was papered is they go on duty in the yard there.
Got it.
Yeah, and I'm a little fuzzy on that because it's actually part of the WSOR, operations. So
yeah, that's one of the synergies, everyone, where technically that is, and that's a great point, actually. The two branches that created all the STB confusion were actually transferred to the WSOR the day after the acquisition. So technically the WSOR is the operator of the southern cluster. And then as mentioned here, Eden is a FOXY branch, but it uses WSOR power. So that's some of the synergies we were talking about earlier, or that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, thank you for the distinction. Scott Kunz asks, any new business or future opportunities on West Bend or Saukville branches?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, those were really unique lines because on one of them, we were running past them to get to our railroad. And on the other, they were running past us to get to their railroad. And it just makes sense for it to all be one railroad, right? So there are plenty of opportunities. Obviously, our WSOR team knows all the customers there really well and has been working with them either directly or indirectly for a while. So Absolutely, it is. And we'll grow those opportunities just like any of the other branches.
Thank you for that. Bob Gallegos asks, please explain about the Mosinee Wausau service. Was that not part of the original plan? Is CN serving any local customers on that segment?
Not on the joint track. They do serve customers up from Stevens Point up until the cutoff. Well, you're pointing one, Brian. Did I get that wrong?
The power plant.
But isn't that south or is that on the joint track?
That's why there is the joint track.
Okay,
So-
sorry. Okay, so my geography was, I thought the power plant was south. Okay, so they still serve the power plant. Everything else is us, and then they operate over it to the power plant and for purposes of interchange with us at Wausau. It was not part of the original deal. It was added as part of the final round bid in addition to the other businesses around the Wausau area.
Bob Gallegos, does that answer your question? I'm not hearing from Bob, so I'm going to say that it does. Good.
Yes, it does.
It does. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. Gordon Smith asks, who is dispatching the FOXY? And another gentleman asked the same question.
Yep, our team out of Wichita does, and they have a desk, just like our other railroads. Interestingly, though, in Canada, because the rules are different, we actually have CN still dispatching for us for now until we find a longer term solution.
And CN dispatches the Valley sub too.
The joint track.
On the joint track.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep. No, but good clarification. Yeah.
Dean Savola asks, it's a fairly long question. Highland Copper has been on a long, steady, slow development path at White Pine, recently completing the final purchase of the mine and assets. They have a permitted mine nearby. They are working on financing now. Have you been in contact with them, or are they on your radar? They have a transload planned on paper at Park Falls. With the price of copper these days, the locals in that area think this might finally happen. There are big hurdles to opening that line to the mine itself, but a transload elsewhere should be a nice source of traffic should Highland fully develop. Care to address that?
Dean, if Brian keeps, knocking off work to take boat pictures, you can come work for Watco. That's right. It's like you just looked into our CRM. That's a little creepy, but no, spot on, and yes.
Long question, short answer. I like that.
Right, spot on. You're reading our minds.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you for the insightful question. William Hoffman asks, are there any plans to pursue the remainder of the Highway 8 corridor, Goodman to Pembine specifically?
Yeah, look, this was one of Congressman Tiffany's major points that he kept really trying to aggressively address with us. And look, we're not against connecting all of the Highway 8 corridor. I think what we have to ask ourselves is, what are we going to move, right? Because in the end, you don't want to spend money to put a corridor back in place that's not going to haul anything, right? It's got to serve a purpose, and it needs traffic that wants to move that way. And I think the problem is, that's the old Sioux line, Sioux to Minneapolis main line. That's what it used to move, is traffic going from Eastern Canada to the Minneapolis area and that gateway. There doesn't see, and we're new. Okay. I'm not going to pretend like we know everything, but at this point, we just do not see, or are not most importantly, I should say, we're not hearing customers saying, we really need to get across the Highway 8 corridor. You need to get this back in place. It's more of a historical perspective of when it was open, we'd like to have it back. And I agree. Again, I'm a historian. I love railroads. I would love to put it back, but there needs to be a case, and we need to hear from shippers that will want to go that way. And I'm talking, again, I want to be clear. I'm talking about the entire corridor. Okay. But what I think is a much more executable option is opening up parts of it as customers and other connections come about. So again, this is not going to be easy. And I do want to make one point here. A lot of people criticize the out of service track, but I would say you need to look at it the completely opposite way. What railroad other than CN would have kept that track? I think every other class one, at least in my experience, would have ripped that track out 20 years ago. So the fact that it's still there, we should be happy about. And, it gives us the opportunity to reopen it. But in terms of the whole Highway 8 corridor, it's going to take a lot of work, and we're going to need to have customers say, we want that open.
The other thing too is specifically Goodman to Pembine. I mean, reading some of the, like Facebook group page questions, people thought that there was some nefarious reason why CN didn't sell Goodman to Pembine. It's to keep FOXY from interchanging with ELS. I'd read that a couple times. Being on the CN side when this map was formulated, it's actually a very simple explanation. If CN had sold FOXY all the way to Pembine, that meant right on day one, FOXY would have to serve Goodman. Well, how are we going to serve Goodman if the line from Rhinelander to Goodman, like 50 miles, is out of service? I mean, the only way to do that would be to put a locomotive at Pembine just to go back and forth from Pembine to Goodman. And that's just not economically viable. So all these people that thought, it's so that they can freeze FOXY out from the ELS. No, it just wasn't practical. That's the simple truth to it. So.
Thank you. Kim Kafura asks, we've heard rumors of Watco building an engine servicing facility in the Appleton Yard this spring. Is this true?
Yes, the rumors are true. It is true. There are rumors. Yes.
We need something up there.
So you're not committing to anything?
I mean, nothing's approved yet. I don't want to go on the public record and say we're going to do it and then we decide to do something else. Let's just say, these lines, all of our servicing is done outside in the elements, and it would be nice to have a central location where we could repair locomotives and have them in-house. That's a logical location. There could be a few others, but I don't believe we've decided anything definitively yet, which is why you're kind of getting the corporate runaround from me, which I apologize.
In other words, you have to walk before you run.
Yeah, but we definitely need something inside at some point.
Yeah. All right. Good. Charles Bourne asks, will the bridges at Marengo be rebuilt?
Stefan's going, where's Marengo?
I'm trying to, so this is White Pine. Where are we?
Up north of Mellon, the washouts.
Oh, the washouts
on the Ashland line.
Okay, I was close. Yeah. It's still Ashland. Okay.
Yeah.
Same answer as before. We need a business case and customers to say we would really ship if this line was in service. And the good news is we have a great model of that on how we've reopened lines on the WSOR, further south, the spur just outside of Madison, for example. But that got put back into service because there was a customer and a desire. And I know there are folks in Ashland that probably could ship, and that's what Brian and Brad are going to work on. I will say it's going to take an enormous amount of money. And so, again, we look towards federal dollars, state support, probably to be able to do that, which is why, to the earlier point on the iron ore, or sorry, the copper, coming out of the White Pine area, the best bet is to transload Park Falls or somewhere like that to start, and then go for the bigger plans as the traffic develops.
Thank you. Andy Worley asks, and he didn't hear your, probably didn't hear your discussion about the yellow SD 60s from UP, because he popped in and out. But I'll read you the question: is the Horicon paint shop permanently shut down? Seeing as the last few repaints were done at NRE, any timeline for the SD60Ms to get red and gray dip, or any other plan for a unified scheme for FOXY? Do you just want to repeat that for your answer for Andy's benefit?
Yeah, like everything with WSOR, we do intend to paint locomotives that are going to be there long term, but we don't have a lot of extras sitting around, and it costs a lot of money, and so you need to sequence them and make sure they're not out of service too long. Recall they are PTC equipped, and you need PTC locomotives now to go to Chicago, so that factors in. But we do plan on painting red and gray units that need to be like the 60s, and then repeating again, FOXY will probably be more of the corporate scheme, but we are starting to kind of leave that up to the local folks, but that'll happen at some point as well.
And then the other part of his question was regarding the paint shop in Horicon. Is that permanently shut down forever?
The paint shop's there. I think we have a good sense of the challenges it has, but you never say never. It's an asset that if things change and business demands, we reopen it. But at this point, yeah, it is shuttered, but we haven't torn it down or anything. So again, I don't want to go on the record and say, yes, it'll be closed forever and then we reopen it. It's having it is a good thing, just like a rail banked rail line.
A good strategic answer there. Are there any other questions from the floor for our presenters tonight?
Hello, Mike. This is Stephen.
Go ahead, Stephen.
So two questions. One is continued discussion on the Highway 8 corridor. On the map, I see that Ladysmith is not connected to the out of service west end of that corridor. If the FOXY decides to rebuild the rest of the west end of the Highway 8 corridor, we have access to the CN main line at Ladysmith. That's one question. Second question is with the Genesee and Wyoming's isolated Tomahawk Railway up in Tomahawk, would there be any discussion with them about purchasing that railroad from the GNW?
So I answered the second part first. The Tomahawk Railway is basically an implant switching railroad for PCA. So could you operate it as kind of the same operation? Maybe, but it's an intense switching operation. Genesee and Wyoming's owned that for a long time. They're great partners of ours. Again, everyone thinks we compete and we always want to take over things from each other. And that's not the case. We really only compete when deals are out in the market. If they're happy there, they're doing a great job. They're taking care of PCA. If they wanted to sell and approach us, we would obviously listen, but we're not going to actively talk to them about trying to get them to sell. So that's that answer. Again, we're really happy to have them there because they really help the efficiency of that plant, moving the cars in and out. And they helped us out a lot on that startup week where we were just slammed with cars on that line, and they just switched the hell out of every delivery we sent them. So they're good partners of ours. As far as Ladysmith, Brian, to be honest, because it wasn't on the table this time, I don't think I ever got up to speed on that. In 2012, there was going to be an interchange there, but that was 10 years ago. So I'm going to let you answer this one.
Well, the sale ended at Tony because at the time when, like I said, at CN, we were putting the map together, there was, well, he had just shut down. There was a log yard there at Tony for Verso, and a significant amount of logs were being moved out of there on a weekly basis. So even though when we were putting the map together, Verso had just ceased using that log yard, it was still fresh enough, I guess you might say, or recent enough that the thought was still that, well, you know, maybe somebody might else come in, or, you know, we can repurpose, or the county owns the yard, you know, that maybe the county can repurpose it for another rail user. So remember, I was on the CN side at that time, and we wanted to keep Tony because we thought that there might be another tenant moving into that yard. And now you're into the exact same problem, though, as Rhineland or Goodman, the Pembine. So if we sold the line entirely to Ladysmith and somebody did move into Tony, but the line is out of service from Prentice to Tony, like 30 miles or whatever it is, how the heck is FOXY going to serve them then? You know, so once again, it was just practicality also that kind of dictated that Tony stay with CN.
But what I would say is, if a significant amount of traffic were to present itself, we would be able to work through that, because then, to what Brian's saying, the variables change, and then you'll need to get it open as a through route again. But again, as I just mentioned, that's a high bar, because until traffic presents itself that wants to move that way, there's really no need for it. But we will, again, we're ears open. We'd love to open it up, but we just don't see where the traffic would come from at this point today. And I think Brian did a good.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and I think Brian outlined it really well, the challenges of the traffic that did in the past move up there. And it's going to take a while for us to break back into that high barrier to entry supply chain that's all truck now.
Well, the thing too is, a lot of the stakeholders that pressure us, that want to see the line reopened, once again, they're not customers with shipping needs. They're they're non-customer stakeholders. And what I seem to found over the years is it's kind of like the electric company. When you get up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and you flick the light switch, you expect the electricity to go on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year. You just expect that when you turn the light switch on in any room of your house, the electricity is there and will go on. It's just not an 8 to 5 thing Monday through Friday. And that's what a lot of people up there want with that Highway 8 corridor. They want the warm, fuzzy feeling that it's there, it's open, there's trains running back and forth on it, even though they themselves don't really have any, they're not a customer, they're not a freight paying customer.
Well, thank you. So we're getting close to, actually my watch just said it is 10 o'clock. So we've been here for a while. Excellent presentation. Just read the comments. Dozens and dozens of people have given you guys kudos, well deserved. Thank you again, Stefan and Brian. We are in your debt for a fantastic program tonight. And once again, I'd like to thank the members of the Wisconsin chapter, NRHS, because it's through their support and their dues that we're able to do things like this. And I'll say to our folks who have been watching tonight, who are not yet members, now's a great time to go to www.nrhswis.org and become a member. It's very simple to do. Stefan, Brian, any last words before we close her all down for tonight?
I just want to, oh, no, I
No,
should
go ahead, Brian, go.
I just want to thank everybody that's hung in here for 2.5 hours. That's all I want to say is thank you, everybody, for still being our audience. And I've been seeing a lot of little comments down at the bottom. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You guys couldn't hear it, but my daughter goes, "Are people still listening to you talk?" So yeah, she agrees. No, in all seriousness, this was a real treat. It was fun to do. And I just want to thank Mike again and the whole chapter for letting us have the stage tonight. It's a lot of fun to talk about it, and I hope you can hear from both of us. You know, we're very passionate about the industry, and it's fun to talk to others that share a common interest. So be safe, and thank you again.
Yeah, Stefan, you know, we've been talking about doing this for quite a while, and today is finally the day, and you guys pulled it off far better than I'd even expected. And I knew you would do well. But again, the level of detail that you gave us is not something that a lot of people would share, and we certainly do appreciate it.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll close the meeting.